Hi, I'm Marina from Frocks Frolics, and matching with the Western blouse, I'm going to show you how to make the Scarlett skirt for a doll. In this video, we're going to do the Scarlett skirt. Now, of course, the Scarlett skirt is the freebie on the website, and so is this one. So you can try both for your girl, both for the doll and for your girl. There isn't much different really in the skirts, so the instructions are actually almost entirely the same as with the girls version. And I hope you enjoy this, and if you liked it, then of course go get the pattern from frocksandfrolics.com. It is free, just like the video, and go ahead and make one. So let's have a look at what we need to make this little skirt. For this skirt you've got three parts, and we've got the waistband up here. That comes in one piece, and it's also the tunnel for the elastic. So all that's going to happen is we're going to fold over the top edge and stitch through, and that's going to be the tunnel, right? We want to serge the sides and the top edge for this and leave the lower edge as it is. Then we've got the lower part of the skirt, and that we're going to cut 2 times on the fold, and it's actually literally twice the width of the waistband. That works really well. What you want to do is to serge the sides again and then the lower edge, and we leave the top edge as it is. And then the upper skirt we're cutting twice again on the fold, and it's actually exactly the same length as the lower layer. Yeah, they fit on top of each other perfectly. So we do the same again. We're going to serge the edges and the lower edge, and that way we're going to have a complete skirt. So this is what it's going to look like when it sits all on top of each other. You also need the elastic, like I said, which fits in here when it's folded over. Now, if you're making a pattern like this yourself, always make sure that you've got enough movement room for your elastic, a little bit of wiggle room, maybe 5 millimeters extra you should allow for that, or even 6 or 7, both would work. The first step is to close the side seams. So we do that for the waistbands. We're putting the right sides on top of each other, put one pin in, or you don't really need to pin this, it's doll close, but never mind. And we do the same on the upper layer, of course, on both sides. We pin those together, and then we do the same on the lower layer as well. We pin the side seams together. And once we've done that, schwuppdiwupp, as we say in German, we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew it together. The seam allowance allowed here is always 1 centimeter, but for a gathered skirt it really doesn't matter. If you want to use a little bit more or a little bit less, it doesn't matter. And then we do the same on the lower layer. Obviously it makes sense to take the next part straight away and put it under, so that you're saving yourself precious thread and that you don't waste any, and you should always really do that. And don't forget to lock in your stitches beginning and end, and do the same also on the upper layer of the skirt. And that's it, all done. Now we want to iron those seam allowances apart. And then the next step is to already to the tunnel for this. So I fold it over, and it's exactly 1 inch for me. That's perfect to leave me a little bit of room, and I'm also going to top stitch that top edge in a little bit. And I can pin that with 1 inch distance all the way around. Now what I noticed afterwards, I thought, well, why not leave the opening for the tunnel instead of leaving it at the lower edge where you sew around, just leave it in the actual side seam. So that was a little bit of an afterthought, but what you can do, of course, is mark that like I've done here, and then you just leave a turning gap there. I just opened mine back up, and now I'm pinning it all the way around, and I can start top stitching this both at the top edge and at the lower edge in the middle of the serging. And now we're going to just top stitch this. Take the plate off your sewing machine and just put the piece on the arm. That makes it a lot easier. unstitch once round. Look at that, I just let that glide through my hands. It's really simple. Sewing's fun. Don't forget to lock in your stitches. Next, let's top stitch the edge up here as well. It makes the elastic sit in a little bit better. It's not necessary, but you can do it. You could also then, once the elastic is in, top stitch that again right through the center. But again, when you have got this little stitch at the top, you don't need to do that. It makes it sit really, really nicely. Next, we're going to do the hems as well. So turn them up just so it's a little bit more than your serging line, and then line it up with the edge of the presser foot. And in my case, it's just a little bit less than the edge of the presser foot. Actually, I've got a little red line there. The Pfaff presser feet are brilliant. They've got all these different lines on there that are really handy, and I love working with those. The next step is to put together the layers of the skirt. So we put the top layer onto the lower layer. Obviously, all the right sides need to be facing up. And I start by putting the seam allowances on top of each other, and the rest will automatically fit, of course, because they are the same length. And a few more pins. And then I make sure that the edges are all on top of each other, because now we're going to put the gather threads in so that it sits together, and I've done that already. Next step is to put the waistband on the top. Now, the only thing to watch out for is that the seam needs to sit either on the center back or center front of the skirt. They're the same, aren't they? So that you don't end up with seam on seam here. And then I'm going to the side seam, and I put that on, and the other one as well. To be honest, the center front and center back is enough, really. And then you gather the skirt to fit the waistband. It's super simple. We're only pulling the bobbin threads, and when you put in gather threads, there always need to be the longest stitch length available that you have on your sewing machine, one stitching line close to the edge, 1 foot width next to it, and that's all there is to it. It takes a while really to gather it up and then pin it in, but it's well worth the effort. It looks absolutely cute. Over to the sewing machine. We're going to sew this together now. What I would recommend to you is that you always sew from the inside, meaning that you would turn the skirt so that it's easier to move it along. But in this instance, because I've got the small distances, and I wanted to show you this, and if you do it the other way around, the fabric kind of gets in the way. I'm doing it the other way around. But what you also could do, and this is another tip, you could again move off the plate and then just sew it around the arm, and then you can sew it exactly like I do as well. So there's many methods that you can use to actually sew this on. And you want to stitch right in the center between your gather stitches for this, and then you hop on over to your serger and serge it. The next step is to top stitch that seam allowance into your waistband, and I would make the stitch length longer. We want 3 or even 3.5, and we're going to stitch all the way around. There you go. It's so super quick to sew this. The only bit is the gathering really, and you can see how lovely that looks on the inside. Last step, people, we just need to put the elastic in now so that we have got a lovely little waist. And blend it in. Of course, you can see more from the Doll collection now that I hope you're going to really enjoy. All these items are also available in girl size, so you can get all that on my website. Now, when you come to the end, sometimes your safety pin will get stuck in that little bit of seam allowance here. And what you do in that case, you grab a scissor, and we are going to put the scissor in that gap, because you can see I can't get through. So by lifting the seam allowance out of the way with your scissor, it's really easy because you can slip that safety pin underneath the scissor and then pull it out. I would also recommend that you go away and get yourself a really nice steel safety pin, because if you're using one of the cheaper ones like I am doing here, I couldn't find my good one, to be honest. They bend and sometimes they come apart, and then you have them out of the elastic and have to pull it all out and start again. Now we're going to just quickly secure the elastic with 2 stitching lines while they overlap. So I tend to do that with my 2 fingers, just spread them out and hold it, and that's it basically. Then the elastic is just fiddled back in. And the little gap we have, we can leave open or we can close it. Doesn't really matter too much, I have to say. I would just leave it open and still close. And you could even now put a bow on as well if you liked. I think it's just like super, super cute. And that's it. We're finished with the skirt, and I hope you enjoyed it. It's really super, super simple. If I've made you an appetite for dolls' clothes or even girls' clothes, then visit frocksandfrolics.com, have a look at the vintage collection, which I think is great for the summer, and of course for all your dolls as well. So I hope to see you soon again for another project with Frocks and Frolics. Bye for now.